So good afternoon to all of you. 5 क्वेश्चन थे आपके पास, ठीक है. We'll discuss them at the end of the class. पहले मॉडर्न इंडिया का इंट्रोडक्शन खत्म कर लेते हैं. Let us see all those areas. Online students, all of you those who are enrolled, if you have written answers, kindly send them to Dheeraj. ठीक है ना, उनको send कर दो. They will get evaluated and you will get mentorship support also along with that. Those of you who are not enrolled, just check your answers along with my discussion at the end of today's class. First we'll focus on modern India. All of you have the concept list. ठीक है, क्या क्या चीजें आपको बेसिक समझनी है. And then see. So when we talk about modern India, मीनिंग क्या होता है मॉडर्न इंडिया का? What do you consider modern? है ना, पता तो होना चाहिए ना कि मॉडर्न होता क्या है. आधुनिक ट्रांसलेशन इनटू हिंदी. So we have to at least have a basic outline कि what is the meaning of modern. So modernity of any society, polity can be seen on the basis of its institutions. If we have modern institution, है ना, modern institution आया कहाँ से? The word modern, forget about India, it is often linked with the period of Enlightenment. Okay, Enlightenment, it was a cultural movement which was very prominent in Europe in 17th and 18th century. And through this Enlightenment, we were able to get large number of ideas with respect to political institutions, with respect to society, with respect to economy, science, religion. All those domains were getting affected. So such a state, such a society came to be known as modern India. Now let us try to understand what changes happened. Till last week, what have we discussed about? We have discussed about who was the king, who was this, who was that eventually. So it means it was more of despotism. Whatever used to be the wordings of the king, that became the law of the land. There was no concept of rule of law. Okay, so this first important concept, rule of law, should be the basis of governance. This became prominent under the British because they were the one who were able to get the political power in India. We'll discuss about it, but the scenario for that. Similarly, if you see society, what kind of changes are required in a society to be considered it as a modern society? There should be no slavery. There should be equality to a certain level. So how did these things came? These things came from these ideas of Enlightenment. When we'll discuss world history, there the first important topic is French Revolution. And French Revolution, all of you may know the goals also: equality, liberty and fraternity. So those important elements of equality, ठीक है, merit, that those who are more talented, they should be able to get good opportunities. Previously, who was having the opportunity to become a king or a bureaucrat? It was only those people who were from the lineage of the higher strata of the society, not the people from the middle class, not the people from the lower strata. So this is how the society was now going to get transformed in the future. Right now, all of you are eligible for preparation of civil services, right? कैसे आता है? Because you know you can get selected. If you already know you will not get selected, will you prepare for this or you're not eligible? नहीं कर पाओगे. Previously, whatever bureaucracy we read, है ना, चाहे वो दिल्ली सल्तनत हो, चाहे मुगल हो, all those areas, the society was not based upon equality. And moreover, even though the people may have talent, they will not become part of the bureaucracy. Right now, all of you can become part of bureaucracy because society is now full. I'm not saying from 18th century onwards all these things were implemented in 100%, but these idea was now going to become prominent. Okay, that's why you see socio-religious reform movement started in India. We all of us know about Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the father of modern India. So they were also influenced by the ideas of Enlightenment. And what were those ideas? These were the ideas. Equality. Equality was the most important. Equality with respect to people of higher strata, lower strata. Equality between men and women. Okay, all these are the ideas of a modern people. And this starts from world history's first important topic, Enlightenment. Enlightenment के बाद आता है French Revolution. Anyway, similarly, when we talk about economy, 18th century is the century from where we see the beginning of Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution में बहुत important चीजें start हो गई for our society. What were those? First of all, we see production of goods were now not done by the use of your hand. It was done on the basis of machines. Second, production was now not small scale. It was a large scale production. The first important sector which was affected by the Industrial Revolution, it was cotton or textile. So the whole economy was now going to be influenced by the factory system, use of machine, and that's why the importance of free market economics is going to increase in the societies. This is how the economy will get transformed. All of us understand. अभी जैसे हम terms का use करते हैं ना, first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution. Right now we say कि हाँ fourth industrial revolution चल रहा है. Fifth industrial revolution के लिए भी कुछ हमने framework बना लिया है. So this industrial revolution, it starts from 18th century, and this is going to impact our economy. Similarly, religion. The impact of religion on the lives of people, this was also going to get impacted. Like in India, the socio-religious reform movements were done so that religion can become a private part of the life. Like all of you, which religion you profess, it doesn't matter to me, right? Because it is your private affair. Similarly, the impact of religion on the state, that was also reduced substantially. We see the emergence of a secular state. State should not differentiate among people on the basis of their religion, and this became the part of the fundamental rights also. So this is how the religion was going to be changed. Plus the superstitions, the large number of superstitions linked to your religion were now going to get replaced, okay, by the modern thinking. Similarly, science and technology. We see large amount of progress in the field of science and technology. You see the emergence of important personalities like Isaac Newton. He came up with the laws of motion. Kepler came with the ideas about the law of planetary motion. So through this, large amount of science and technology is going to improve in this century, which will make our lives better. Okay, whatever products you use, try to identify each and everything has a certain base. If we were not having electricity, 99% of the things that we use, they will go defunct, right? They will go defunct. कुछ भी आप यूज कर रहे हो, चाहे वो आपका फोन है, क्लासेस में बैठना विदाउट एसी, कैमरा है ना, विदाउट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, none of them they are going to work. So जितना भी साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी में डेवलपमेंट हुआ है, it becomes prominent from 17th, 18th century onwards. So whenever somebody says the word modern, you should be able to understand it in the form of these things. Okay, whenever we talk about polity, not just rule of law, justice, separation of powers between executive, legislature and who is the third one? Judiciary, which is very prominent for justice. So change from despotism towards rule of law. Constitutional governments. Why a constitution is created? क्या reason होता है उसके लिए? So that the powers of the government can be limited. Otherwise, they will have unlimited powers. Those were to be restricted. Like in our constitution, we have fundamental rights. And what is the role of fundamental rights? It restricts the authority of the government. Like if you want to reside in any part of India, you can do so. whatever profession you wish to profess, you can do so. Okay? Whichever religion you want to join, you can do so. And how does that come? It comes through the structure of the state which allows these things. And these are not privileges, these are the fundamental rights. Creation of High Court, Supreme Court, the rules, etc. for all these important authorities of the state are done by the Constitution. So that's why the rule of law, why I have written rule of law, because this was the basis of the British government. All of you know about that? At Britain, it has an unwritten constitution. The most important thing there is rule of law. Okay, so when somebody says modern, you should try to understand these things. These are the modern things, and they have influenced the next 2 centuries of India. And even till today, the modern India is continuing. Like all of you have understood, how many women rulers were there in ancient India and medieval India? Very less. We know about very less number of them. But in modern India, we have seen like Indira Gandhi, she became the Prime Minister of India, which is something new. If we see from polity point of view, okay, we see that women candidates becoming President of India, right? So this is something which was going to change from this time onwards. Even though India being a patriarchal society, the percentage of you can say representation of women in parliament, state legislature is again very less. So that means the modernization of Indian society is still not complete. We see the problems in each and every sector, that in politics we have some problems. All of you understand them, है ना? क्या-क्या problems हैं? हम politically इतने educated लोग नहीं हैं. The manner in which we cast our vote, हम कोई भी care नहीं करता. Last दिन सब सोचते कौन तुम्हारे लिए क्या करेगा, उसके basis पे vote करेंगे. And that affects our next 10 years. Similarly, if we see our society, there is considerable problems on the basis of the caste system, the way we eventually divide all the people. Okay. Similarly, in economy also, India's industrial revolution has still incomplete. That's why our services sector is strong, our industrial sector is still weak. We have large number of MSMEs. We have very less big companies in the industrial sector. If we see in terms of religion, even today we have issues of godmen. है ना? हर स्टेट में 2-4 गॉडमैन हैं जिनके प्रोग्राम चलते हैं लाइव टीवी पे, and they have considerable influence on the people. That means the scientific temper which was to be inculcated among the people is still not being done to that level. And even in science and technology, we people are the most important lovers of jugaad rather than pure research. That's why the field of physics, chemistry, the pure fields, वहाँ पे enrollment कम मिलता है. क्यों? आगे करियर नहीं है. Because टेक्नोलॉजी और रिसर्च में हम कम एक्सपेंडिचर करते हैं. मैंने आपको दोनों साइड इसलिए दिखाया है. सम ऑफ यू मे गेट दीज क्वेश्चंस कि सर ऐसा तो आप बोल रहे हो सोसाइटी इक्वालिटी आ गई, कहाँ है इक्वालिटी? बट एटलीस्ट एन अप्रोच हैज बीन गाइडिंग दैट. आप स्टेट की लार्जर पॉलिसीज अगर देखोगे, ठीक है, मैक्सिमम स्कीम्स किसके लिए बनाई जाती हैं? दे आर मेड फॉर द लोअर स्ट्रेटा पीपल, एंड दैट्स हाउ दे आर ट्राइंग टू अचीव अ लेवल ऑफ इक्वालिटी. Even though it is never going to happen strictly in the world, until we have only one person, the perfect equality है. Whenever we have 2 people, there is never going to be equality. ठीक है, उसका concept मैं आपको साथ में समझाऊंगा. There is a famous scholar Rousseau. He came up with a very fine concept of inequality. He said there are 2 types of inequality. One is natural. Okay, natural can be seen at the level of the evolution of the people also. If we have large number of organisms on the earth other than humans also, do you think that it is equality? No, it's the process of evolution. Okay, some of us have more height, some of us have less height, है ना? कोई ज़्यादा fair है, कोई थोड़ा सा black की तरफ है, किसी का shade. So these are natural inequality traits. किसी का nose किसी specific type का है, किसी का कुछ. These are natural. But artificial inequality comes in when the institution of private property came in. Possession जहाँ से start हो गया. ठीक है, तो वो उनका कंसेप्ट है, वो बाद में बात करेंगे. वी डोंट हैव टू गो इनटू द फिलॉसफी राइट नाउ, बट आई होप यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई वी हैव यूज्ड द वर्ड मॉडर्न इंडिया. द मॉडर्न इंडिया रिप्रेजेंट्स द ऑल दीज क्वालिटीज व्हिच वर टू बी इनकलकेटेड इन इंडिया. नाउ द प्रॉब्लम विद अस, लेट अस ट्राई टू reimagine the 18th century. The problem with us was In 18th century, we see the death of Aurangzeb in 1707. So, from this, the power was going to become decentralized. Okay, power was getting decentralized. We see the beginning of invasions. Like this invasion of Nadir Shah eventually led to the downfall of Mughals, complete shattered. This one affected the chances of Marathas. Okay, so 18th century, if we see, at a time when decentralization was beginning, we have already discussed the three categories of state, which included successor state, independent state, as well as rebellious state, which became decentralized polity. And same time, India was now becoming weak militarily. Right. So this was the time where British were able to take the various opportunities and two major battles. First, they were able to get hold over Bengal, and then they completely dominated through these two battles of Plassey and then Buxar. So that's why all these modern elements that we see, rather than to be brought by indigenous ruler, now this is going to be used by British as a major cause. Why we have come to India? We have come to India because you people are not having any kind of stable polity, and we want to incorporate all the modern elements in India. Eventually, whenever somebody says this just means the basics foundation of a civilization. That's why they always said that India is a people of India is a nation of barbaric people, and we have come to create a civilization. And some of the educated Indians, they even believed them. Why? Because of this nature of Indian polity. Okay. Now we'll shift towards the first important topic, the coming of the European powers. I've just given you a perspective of what is modern India and who is going to lead this process of modernization of the society. It was not an indigenous ruler, it was the British who were going to begin with that project. Now, the European company, all of you know, there are four prominent European powers which came to India. First to come one, Portuguese, came in 1498. Then we see the coming of the Dutch, okay, then coming of the English, and final to come were French. Okay, so these were the four powers who came towards India. All of them has certain amount of impact on India's political as well as legal process. Okay, so when Portuguese came even more earlier than the Mughals. Mughals se bhi pehle aa gaye. Mughals came in 1526. So from this time inwards, if you see the next century, in 16th century, they were able to dominate the scene of India. They tried to monopolize the trade of Arabian Sea. Okay, they tried to monopolize it. Along with this, they also introduced certain things in India like printing press. They introduced various agricultural commodities, okay, like tomato, tobacco, potato, in their limited areas, because the areas where their power was limited, areas like Goa, right, areas like Daman and Diu, these areas they also tried to come up with certain reforms. They came up with a civil code irrespective of the religion. All these things were brought in by the Portuguese. But there was one very major problem with these Portuguese. Okay, while trying to monopolize the trade of the Arabian Sea, they used different kind of methods. One was prominent Carta system. Carta system means it was a kind of, you can say, permit which was provided by the Portuguese, and if any ship doesn't have this permit, that ship could be considered as a contraband, कि आपने illegal trade किया है and we can capture it. ठीक है? So every ship having any kind of trade in the Arabian Sea was to purchase this cartas, and this was given at a price. Okay, and this became a major problem for Indian rulers because their foreign trade was now getting affected by the regulations of Portuguese. Okay, so this was the Carta system. Second, they came up with the Kafila system also, that those traders who used to be close to them, they used to provide security to them. Okay, their ships were eventually militarized. Guns उन्होंने वहाँ पे use करना start कर दिया with the ships. So this became part of the Kafila system. So the 16th century was majorly dominated by the Portuguese, even though it didn't affect the overall trade of Arabian Sea. Why? Because Indian rulers, they now gave patronage to pirates. It's pirates who can easily affect the Portuguese because they were coming up with this Carta system. They were defeated in various battles on the land. Many forts were constructed by the Portuguese. है ना, जैसे अगवाड़ा फोर्ट है famous in Goa, है ना, दिल चाहता की पूरी shooting हुई थी वहाँ पे. So those forts, they were created by the Portuguese to dominate the western coast of India. So eventually the ships of the Portuguese, they became defunct, their authority got undermined, and Portuguese, they were occupied by the Spain in Europe. Right? है ना, as all of you understand, Europe की एक अलग equation चलती रहती थी. The two most dominant powers in Europe, they were English and the French. Okay, so Spain occupied Portuguese, and this reduced the power of Portugal in India. Plus the rivalry with the coming of the 17th century, we see first the coming of the Dutch. So Dutch defeated Portuguese and even took away from them the areas of Indonesia. Then came British. British also defeated Portuguese. All of you must have read it in NCERT. Captain Hawkins, Captain Thomas Roe, they went to the court of Jahangir for some land which could be provided them so that they can establish their factories. So British were getting the patronage from the Mughals also because they were against Portuguese. So that's why they were able to set up their bases in Surat, Masolipatnam. They also started creating their various forts like Fort St. George around Madras, Fort William later on in around Calcutta. So these were started creating by the British. The British were getting the support from Indian rulers. Why? Because they were against the Portuguese. Okay. Later on, these two, like 17th century, became the main tussle initially between Dutch and British. They're very close by. Dutch is nothing but Netherlands. So they decided to earmark that हम अपना areas divide कर लेते हैं. So Dutch started focusing on the areas of Indonesia and British largely started focusing more on India. This was decided between these two, even though the conflict did not end with this. And there is one famous battle of Buxar, which will fought in 1759 between Dutch and the British, which effectively ended the control of Dutch in India. Okay? Dutch were also defeated by one of the indigenous Indian rulers. He was Martand Varma from Travancore. Okay? So this was also done. So that's why the Dutch power reduced in India. One, because of the conscious pact they had with the British, because of which they were going to focus on the area of Indonesia. When we study world history, there you get even more clarity, because वहाँ पे हमें topic पढ़ना पड़ता है of Indonesia specifically, how it was colonized. So Dutch का base focus वहाँ रहेगा. And this, just like India, India became independent in 1947, but the Indonesia will become around 1949 के आसपास. ठीक है, डच के कंट्रोल के अंदर रहेंगे. देन ब्रिटिश तो हमें ढंग से पढ़ना ही है. द लास्ट पावर, इट वाज फ्रेंच. दे around 1664. The rivalry between France and Britain was the most important struggle of the 18th century. It was not just India where these two powers were fighting. In India, it was about the Carnatic Wars. 3 Carnatic Wars were fought in India. Okay, the first and the third, the cause of the conflict, it was not even the Indian circumstances. It was the European battle which was going on between these two powers. Like the first Carnatic War, when it was fought, the reason was the Austrian War of Succession. It was the Austrian War of Succession, because of which they started fighting in India also. Okay, and then it was ended. Second Carnatic War is very important for Indians, because here the two powers of Nawab of Carnatic plus the Nawab of Hyderabad. The issue was with respect to succession of these two states. One side was picked by the French under the leadership of Dupleix. Dupleix was a very powerful governor from the French. Okay, and the second side was picked by Robert Clive under the British. And this is how the Second Carnatic War remains the most prominent war which was fought between these two. At the end of the Second Carnatic War, around 1754, Dupleix, who was the most powerful governor of the French, he was recalled. And then later on, the Third Carnatic War, it was the part of 7 Years' War. Okay, 7 Years' War was again fought between Britain and France. All right, and one of the area where it was being fought was USA. Okay, from 56 to 63. This is how the equation between the European powers was affecting the interest in India. Side by side, we have to also understand that yes, the major battle was between French and the Britain, and in this the French were finally defeated. The famous battle which you have to remember, it's the battle fought in 1760. It is the Battle of Wandiwash. And in this battle, the French were effectively defeated, and later on they signed a peace treaty in 1763, Treaty of Paris, and through this the political expansion of the France in India was now completely checked. खत्म हो गया उसके बाद में. So after 1763, it was up to the British to conquer India. So two types of circumstances are going to help them. The first, that they were able to win over all the European powers, number one. But at the same time, we have to also understand the circumstances of Indian states. If we see those circumstances, the Mughals had now become defunct from 1707. The line of rulers which started from there, it was completely incompetent. Okay, like the Bahadur Shah, Farooq Shah, all of them, Muhammad Shah Rangila, all these people, the line which is often known as Mughal second, it was completely incompetent, and because of this we see rise of 3 categories of states. First category of state was a successor state, second rebellious state, and third was the creation of some independent states. So India was now completely divided at the provincial level. There was no central authority as such, and this is also going to help the British. Second, the power which had the maximum advantage in India at that point of time was Marathas. It was Marathas who could have replaced the Mughals, but they eventually were defeated in the third battle of Panipat. Alright, so this is something which you need to understand, that both circumstances helped the British, indigenous as well as the foreign. Okay, दोनों ने उनको help किया. So Marathas, they were also checked. So this became easy for British. Easy because यहाँ पे उनको कुछ ज़्यादा fight नहीं करना पड़ा initially. And the first state which was chosen by the British, it was Bengal. ठीक है, अब बंगाल के साथ क्या सिचुएशन था? There was a transfer or change of successor in 1756. Who came to power? It was, who became the famous Sultan at this point of time? ये भी नहीं यार, the famous Siraj-ud-Dowla. हाँ बस एक बार बोल दो फिर याद आ जाता है. So Siraj-ud-Dowla, he came to power in 1756. Already death had happened, okay, and at this point of time, what we see eventually, that he was not very much acceptable to the other major functionaries, involving even the famous, you can say, controller of the currency like Jagat Seth. So all the people were against Siraj-ud-Dowla, and his deputy was Mir Jafar. Mir Jafar was his deputy. He himself was thinking, यार मेरे को मिल जाए कुछ, है ना? I should become the Nawab, known as Black Hole incident. So this was an incident in which more than 100 people, okay, 100 plus people, they were kept in a single room, and many of them died because of suffocation, and this is known as Black Hole incident. So because of this, the rivalry of Siraj-ud-Dowla with the English also intensified. Internally he was facing a challenge from Mir Jafar, as well as other people were not very fond of Siraj-ud-Dowla. He was not having very good kind of temperament, and on top of it, now he was having a rivalry with the British. That's why Robert Clive, when he came to Calcutta, he realized that the stage is set for a conspiracy. Okay, it was easy to go with the conspiracy than to fight the army of the Nawab. The army of the Nawab was very big, more than 50-60,000, okay, including cavalry, etc., and other parts of army. So that's why the most viable option was conspiracy rather than taking them head on. Already a fight had started with the French in the south from 1756. That's why what they were thinking now, if we can get control over Bengal. Now one thing which you need to understand about Bengal is, Bengal was the richest province. It was the only province of the Mughals who used to provide the money on time with respect to taxes. And the maximum import of British, it was from Bengal. So if they can get control over the political power of Bengal, they can reduce their expenditure and they will have complete control of the treasury. And keeping this in mind, they went for the conspiracy. And Robert Clive, along with the other functionaries of the office of Siraj-ud-Dowla, eventually fought a battle, that is the Battle of Plassey. And that's why this battle of Plassey is not considered as a battle. It was more of a conspiracy. Because hardly any people died in this battle. Okay, a large part of the segment of the army of Siraj-ud-Dowla, it was under the control of Mir Jafar. He stayed outside the main warfare scene. Okay, so that's why it remained a conspiracy. So in 1757, at a very low cost, British were able to capture Bengal. Not directly, they were having control over Mir Jafar, and Mir Jafar were now to be used as a golden sack. जब मन करे उससे पैसा मांग लिया. He was going to provide the resources, and these resources are going to become defining in the complete control of India in the coming years. So there is a very famous comment. We often compare two personalities. One is Dupleix, he is from France. The second is Clive. Dupleix went toward Deccan for his political project. Clive went towards Bengal. तो एक क्वेश्चन आपका स्टेटमेंट आता है इसके ऊपर, ठीक है, that Dupleix made a cardinal blunder for finding the key of India in Deccan. Okay, Clive thought comprehensively and found it in Bengal. The reason was the politics of Deccan, it was very unstable. Okay, in Bengal the politics was stable. सिर्फ एक को हटाना था, little bit of conspiracy, and now you are in control of a province. When it comes to Deccan, large number of infightings were going on. And second very important thing, Bengal was very rich in resources. So the resources of this province could be used for the capturing or for the control of rest of the territories of India. This is the first major concept which we see where we compare the French Governor General and Robert Clive. So Robert Clive was able to do so. Okay, so this is the first major victory of the British, the Battle of Plassey. From 1757 onwards till 1760, Mir Jafar kept on serving the British, but he was not able to provide the amount of resources which were asked by the British. So that's why he was changed in 1760, and in his place Mir Qasim was instated. उसको बुला लिया. Now Mir Qasim, British thought that Mir Qasim will also be a puppet. Whatever we are going to tell him, he is going to do accordingly. But to their amazement, Mir Qasim was a very good administrator. Okay, so what Mir Qasim did, first of all, he changed his capital. अपना capital change कर लिया उन्होंने कि दूर रखते हैं. We should stay a little bit away from the British. Second, he started creating arms factory so that he can modernize his army. And third, he started poking the British with respect to the misuse of dastaks. Okay, dastaks were just like passes. These kind of privileges were given by the Indian rulers like Farooq Shiar, all of you understand, and the dastak was given in 1717. As per this, they were not required to pay duty to the province, but these dastaks were misused by the officials of the company. देखो दो तरीके की trade हो सकती है. Whenever trade is going to happen, if we have British East India Company, the trade can be done by the company. Second, the private trade can be done by the official. So the dastaks were to be used only for the trade of company, but the officials were also using it. So this was not allowed, but this was being carried on. That's why Mir Qasim, he abolished the system of dastaks itself. So everybody was now going to pay the same amount of tax, चाहे वो Indian है, चाहे वो foreigner है. So these kind of privileges were taken away by him by abolishing them. So by 1763, the anticlimax was going to come for Mir Qasim. Mir Qasim was dethroned and he went to the area of Awadh. Okay? He fled to there. Right. Thereafter, he created an alliance with Shuja-ud-Dawla of Awadh as well as the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. So this was created by him, and in 1764, first major battle was fought by the British, known as the Battle of Buxar. Now, Battle of Buxar is going to become very prominent. Why? Because the first battle, Battle of Plassey, British had not proved anything that they are having the right kind of power to control the rest of India. But in Buxar, they were able to defeat the state of Awadh. They defeated even Shah Alam II, who was the nominal emperor of India. Plus, at the same time, Bengal also. Okay, so Buxar is going to become the defining moment for the British. Plus, at this point of time, when battle was being fought, Marathas did not came because Maratha had been defeated by the Ahmad Shah Abdali in 1761. That's why it is important, since the Marathas were already defeated, they were not able to support Shah Alam II, even though there were previous treaties between the Marathas as well as the Mughal emperor that they are going to provide the safety and security. At this point of time, the British were now going to become the prominent personality in Indian politics. Okay, so British, who came in, got the charter in 1600. By 1608, they tried to create a factory at Surat. In 1757, they were able to capture political power, but it was completely indirect through betrayal. So by 1764, this company was able to transform itself. Here it was a purely commercial body. This commercial body is now having political authority. So this was the transformation of the British East India Company. Okay, 1600 में क्या कर रहे हैं? सिर्फ ट्रेड करने के लिए आए with India. Continued till 1757. In 1757, they were able to defeat the Nawab, and then the next Nawab, Mir Jafar, remained under their control. But in 1764, they were able to prove that we also have more military strength than the indigenous powers. And that's why from 1764, it's never going to look back. It will become a political authority. So sometimes a question is asked, how the British East India Company was able to transform itself from there to here. And the important event that we have to cover is the Carnatic Wars, and then eventually these two famous battles, the Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar. Okay, so this is the initial time which you have to understand. Till this time, British were not having any specific administrative apparatus. Till this, they were only tried to act as a commercial body. But now in 1764, they have become a political body. And as all of us understand, in 1765, they got the Diwani rights. Now they could collect the revenue of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, and they also got the Nizamat. Through Nizamat, like if you see the structure, at the top there are going to be Nizam or Nawab. Under this was going to be a deputy Nizam. This deputy Nizam was to be appointed by the British, okay, in Bengal, and even the Nizam could not make him leave. उसको हटा नहीं सकता था. Couldn't be fired by Nizam. So the whole administration came under the control of British through Nizamat, the civil administration, plus the Diwani rights were given by the Shah Alam II itself. So through these factors, by 1765, Britain is now going to have a complete control over the areas of North India. From 1765 till 1772, for 7 years, British were having a kind of government which is known as dual government. Dual government means the face of the governance, it was Nizam. Okay, the face of the government was Nizam. Like for very short period, they put again Mir Jafar on throne. Okay, the face was Nizam, but this Nizam was not having any say on administration because the deputy Nizam was under the control of British. And second, they were not even having the revenue because Diwani rights were taken by the British. So British were now having the power without any responsibility, while the Nizam was only having the responsibility without any power. So this form of government is known as dual government, and this continued from 1765 till 1772 for 6 to 7 years. Okay, and this was having a large number of shortcomings which we will discuss in the later core classes, जब हर topic को हम evaluate करेंगे in various parts. But this is what you need to understand. They transformed themselves into a political authority by 1765, and the initial arrangement what they created, they kept Nizam in front. What is the reason? Can you think of any reason why Nizam was kept in front in 1765? There must be some reason, ना? नहीं तो खुद कर लेते. They could have thought of let us start the administration from now this time onwards, but that was not done by the British. कुछ तो reason होगा उसके पीछे. What can you think of? So there was some logical reason. Like first reason was, so far it was a commercial body, it was not having any kind of administrative experience. तो experience नहीं था कि ये कैसे करना होता है. Overnight you cannot become an administrator. It is again gradual process. Second, they did not want to show Indian rulers that they are in power. Otherwise, any form of alliance could have been created against them. And they were at this point of time, they were not having a very strong military. Okay, they could have been easily defeated. If all these powers of Maratha, Mysore could have come at once, they could have been easily defeated. So this was the second reason. They were having this fear in their mind that if we'll stay in front, eventually we may be crushed by an alliance of Indian powers. Okay, and third, they didn't want to take the responsibility. यार अपने को पैसा चाहिए. All companies, they work for profits, they do not work for governance. So this was a company, okay, which wanted profits. तो उनके पास profit आ ही रहा था. What was the requirement to go into the administration? Just have a control about it. Okay, do not govern. So this system was created by Robert Clive, and this was abolished in 1772. उसमें उसको abolish कर देंगे. ठीक है? This is what you need to understand, that from 1600 till roughly 1764, we see a commercial body. From here, this is the transition phase. And from 1773, all of you know it was the first regulating act which was going to come in 1773, defining the administration of the British company, which will create a Governor General of Bengal, which will establish Supreme Court of Calcutta, etc., etc. So the governance process will be formalized by the Regulating Act of 1773. So from 1773 till 1947, okay, they became directly responsible for the governance of India. Okay, there are certain phases This can also be further divided from 1773 till 1833. It was having both the functions of administration as well as commerce. In 1833, it became a complete administrative body. So from 1833 till 1947, it remained just an administrative body. From 1773 till 1833, both regulations were with it. So this is the basic structure of the governance process, which all of you understand. Yes, Shantanu, correct. It is difficult to administer the people of region for which you do not know anything. जैसे इंडिया के बारे में कुछ पता नहीं था इनको, how to govern these people. So that also created the complexity. But roughly इसको अपने दिमाग में रखना, because when you will see the syllabus, यही सारी चीजें syllabus में दी हुई है. Let us just now see the mind maps. So if you see our syllabus, European penetration into India. In this we have a topic of early European settlements. Okay, these four: Portuguese and the Dutch, English and the French. The struggle for supremacy, which we have discussed in terms of the Carnatic wars. Then the Bengal, the conflict between English and the Nawab of Bengal. The relationship between Sirajuddola and English. Then the Battle of Plassey, and finally the significance of the battle. Thereafter, we see the British expansion. The expansion going to include the Battle of Buxar, and then eventually the fighting with Mysore, Marathas, and then eventually the Punjab. Okay, so this is how the expansion is going to burn. And along with this, British will also try to create the structure of the Raj, which includes early administrative structure. And this is what the word they use, from diarchy to direct control. Diarchy was this 7 year, 1765 to 72. Whenever there two people are involved in the governance, it terms as diarchy or dual government. Then comes the Regulating Act 1773, then 1784, 33, and then the rest of the act. This is how they will try to create the early structure in India along with the expansion in India. Now let us try to understand the broad phases of the British rule. (1857) is going to become a defining year. Okay, वो हम बाद में समझेंगे. Bye. Now they are taking responsibility for the administration in a direct manner. Whenever somebody tries to create an administration, what are the component of an administration? ठीक है, that is something which you have to understand. So they have to create a taxation structure. In India, the majority of the land revenue was the only source of taxation, and rest were the custom duties. वो तरीका था for collection of revenue. So yes, a taxation structure was to be created. So from 1772 onwards, they started thinking how to stabilize the revenue of the government. है ना? All of you must have heard about permanent settlement, then the Rayatwari, then the Mahalwari. All these settlements, they were done for the creation of a taxation structure so that revenue can come to the government, and they are going to struggle for that also. From 1772 onwards, they will start the 5-yearly settlement. This was started by Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings will become the first Governor General of Bengal. Okay. So they will start the experimentation phase with 5-yearly settlement. Then he'll shift to 1-yearly settlement. But all these settlements which were done by Warren Hastings, 5-yearly, 1-yearly. In this, what they used to do, they used to go for auction. And the big contractor, they used to say, I'm going to provide this much revenue for 5 years, but all these failed. They were not able to create any specific mechanism for revenue collection. This governor will be replaced in 1785. From 1786, we see coming of Cornwallis. Cornwallis was himself a landlord in Britain. So when he came, he was given one additional power, that he can override his council. Okay. So Cornwallis came to India with additional powers, and it was this: in 1790 they created a report on the basis of the Committee of John Shore, which eventually took the form of permanent settlement in 1793. This was the first building block of administration, that the government should have stable revenue. है ना, जैसे अभी भी इंडियन गवर्नमेंट है, अगर रेवेन्यू नहीं होगा तो कैन इंडियन स्टेट stay in the same order? No, it will collapse. That's why revenue is where the first important foundation of the state. This is also said by Kautilya, who says without revenue nobody is going to survive. This experiment started from Warren Hastings time onwards and continued and stabilized to some extent by Cornwallis. But this was the first problem in front of them. Okay. Second, now they wanted expansion. Bengal was under their control. They were having the resources. Now they identified who were the major powers in India. उनको हमें देखना पड़ेगा. So as we can see, the major powers in India were Mysore, Marathas, and then the Hyderabad was not that much because वो already उनका side लेता रहता था. ठीक है? You can say Punjab, areas like Sind, Awadh already came under their control from 1765 onwards. ठीक है? So these were the major areas which were outside the control of the British. So what they started doing? First their focus was on Mysore and Marathas. इनके ऊपर उन्होंने first major focus शुरू किया. All right. So if we see Mysore, they fought 4 wars. Okay. The initial ruler of Mysore, he was Hyder Ali. Hyder Ali was able to change the previous kings, okay, of the Chika dynasty, and then he came to power. In the first war, which was fought with the Mysore, Hyder Ali was able to defeat the British in 1769-1770. Starting from the second Mysore war, 1780-84, which eventually became a draw. In the third war, which was fought from 1790 to 92, this was fought by again Cornwallis against Tipu Sultan. Tipu Sultan came to power from the second war itself, and he was the one who was defeated in the third Anglo-Mysore war. After that third Anglo-Mysore war, the power of Mysore declined, and eventually when we see the coming of Lord Wellesley, he was the one who fought the fourth Anglo-Mysore war in 1799, and thereafter Mysore no longer remained a challenge for the British. So what you have to remember, 4 wars were fought, 2 major personality. First was Hyder Ali and second was Tipu Sultan. Okay, and it was Tipu Sultan who was defeated in the third Anglo-Mysore war, and by fourth he died. So Mysore was the one which was to be finished off first. Second came the Marathas. With Marathas they fought 3 wars. The first war, and one thing you have to remember, the basic feature of the Marathas is they're always first going to fight within, and then one person will rush to British, which will sign some treaty, and this will affect their independence. The first was at the death of Madhav Rao. Madhav Rao Peshwa died, and the whole politics around it eventually led to Raghunath Rao signing a treaty with the British. This eventually led to the first Anglo-Maratha war, and this war remained a draw, mostly draw raha. In 1782, they signed the Treaty of Salbai, after which whatever was the mostly dominion of the both party that was restored, and Raghunath Rao was pensioned off. He was not to be supported by the British later on. Then in 1802, the second Anglo-Maratha war, it started. Again, the problem was with respect to the fight between the Peshwa and the remaining part of the Confederacy. Okay, we had discussed in the medieval India that the transformation of the Maratha polity, initially it was the rule of the kings like Chhatrapati Shivaji. Thereafter we see the rule of the Peshwas, famous Peshwas like Balaji Vishwanath, then Bajirao and Bajirao II, and then Narayan Madhavrao. Later on, Nana Fadnavis, the prominent wisdom personality, he died in 1800, and from 1800 onwards, again the tensions within the Maratha polity, they came in, and at this point of time, Balaji Bajirao II, he signed the Treaty of Basin, okay, with the British, which was a Subsidiary Alliance Treaty. Subsidiary Alliance Treaty means there were certain conditions which were to be fulfilled. This again became a major part of the expansion of the British Subsidiary Alliance. The idea of Subsidiary Alliance, it comes from Dupleix, the governor of France itself. In Second Carnatic War, he had completely done the same, taken the sides of the two people from Carnatic and Hyderabad and supported them through military. So this idea was going to become a system with the coming of Lord Wellesley. Okay, 1798 till 1805. This is the time of the Lord Wellesley, when he'll create a specific system known as Subsidiary Alliance. It has certain features. The first feature was the army of the state, it was to be disbanded, plus a force of the British is going to now stationed in that area. That is known as subsidiary force. है ना, subsidiary force उसी को बोलते थे. Like when the Peshwa signed this Subsidiary Alliance Treaty in 1802, his own army was disbanded and a subsidiary force was kept. Then if somebody is going to keep an army in your area, you have to go give for payment. That payment could be done through money or through land. You can give a part of your land for the upkeep of the subsidiary force of the British. Third, the foreign relations, they were now to be controlled by the British, meaning they cannot declare peace, they cannot declare war without the intermediation of the British. British के पास उनके पूरे foreign affairs आ गए. Plus, any French officer could not be appointed by them because they were having rivalry with the French. So all these conditions of subsidiary alliance, okay, they started becoming prominent with the coming of Lord Wellesley. And with the use of this subsidiary alliance treaty, he was able to have control over Hyderabad, control over areas like Awadh, and this was the treaty which was signed in 1802 with the Treaty of Basin. And then the war was fought, in which again the Marathas were defeated. Thereafter the third war, it was fought in 1818 and the Peshwaship was abolished thereafter and Peshwa was sent to Bithur. Title khatam ho gaya. Then if we see about Punjab and Sind, Punjab was under the control of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Ranjit Singh remained in power till his death in 1839. Once he died in 1839, Punjab became unstable in nature, okay, but still very strong in 1839. At that point of time, Sindh was relatively weak. Okay, so Sindh was captured by Charles Napier in 1843. Sindh was being controlled by the Amirs. The rulers were known as Amirs, and they had done nothing wrong with respect to any kind of event. The British were defeated in the first Anglo-Afghanistan war from 1838 to 42, and since they were defeated, now they were trying to prove themselves that we are very strong, and in order to prove that invincibility, they captured Sindh, because till 1843 Punjab was strong. The issue with respect to Punjab was its governance was now getting affected. So the first war was fought from 1845 to 46, and thereafter the second war was fought by Lord Dalhousie. So Punjab was taken away with the two wars. So this is about the expansion. We'll read them in detail later on. So like this timeline, from the beginning, they started caring about administration, which was one component was finance. Okay, this is the part of expansion. Along with this, if we see the administration, administration also had other certain aspects. Creation of the post of Governor General of Bengal. This began from 1773 Act. Creation of the Council of Governor General. Initially, 4 members became part of it. Creation of Supreme Court at Calcutta. This was eventually done in 1774. Private trade was prohibited for the officials of the company. It was under the control of Court of Directors. Court of Directors were the people, all of you understand, in any company we have certain directors. So in this British East India Company we had certain directors. They were now responsible to the parliament. ठीक है, जो भी उनके actions होंगे in India, they were responsible. This initial administrative structure was created by the Regulating Act of 1773, but there were lots of problems in this structure, okay, because they created a Governor General for Bengal. It created a kind of centralization for the other areas like Bombay and Madras. Second problem was no final overriding power was given to the Governor General. So as you can understand, if 3 people are against Governor General, he is never going to have majority. ठीक है, तो veto power was not given to Governor General. This became a problem with this council. Third, the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, it was not very well defined. Which people can be given justice by the Supreme Court? Are they going to be people of India, people of the company, or people of Britain? Okay, so this became a source of tussle between Governor General and Chief Justice of Supreme Court. And finally, the private trade, it did not stop, and this Court of Director, since the responsibility which was provided to this Court of Director, there was no specific accountability for that. And accountability means there is a mechanism through which it is going to be evaluated. This was not there. This regulating act was not that much successful, even though this was the first building block of the administration. So this act was eventually replaced by Pitt's India Act. Pitt's India Act, you try to understand, this is going to create the basic structure of the British administration, and this will continue from 1784 till 1858. Okay? This is going to create the basic structure for the administration. So यहाँ पे क्या क्या changes आएंगे? The Governor General is going to remain the same. The council is going to be reformed. It will be reduced to 3. From here onwards, 2 institutions are going to be created. Okay, how the responsibility will be done? a board of control was created. This board of control was having a member of parliament, and this was going to have complete control over all the functions of the company. Board of control was now directly responsible to the parliament, and this could give direction to the court of directors, which were going to run the affairs of the company. So this is how the Pitt's India Act created again a dual control, board of control and the court of directors, and this will continue till 1858. Okay, the 1858 is going to abolish this structure. Okay, and the office of Secretary of State will be created by then, and advisors will be created. Okay, this structure is going to continue where the board of control is going to create. Now this came in 1784, and from now this time onwards we see the beginning of the various charters. Charters often revised the powers given to the company for 20 years. Okay, so this, after this, eventually Charter Act was given in 1793, then 1813, then 1833, then in 1853. In each of these also certain changes were brought in. Like 1813 is famous because it broke the trading monopoly of the company. Only two things remained. One was their tea trade and plus the trade with China. In 1833, now this became a purely administrative body, and in this act we see the creation of the post of Governor General of India. Lord William Bentinck became the first Governor General. Okay, and all the other dominions like Bombay and Madras were now kept under his control. Legislative power from these areas were also taken away. So the complete centralization was done by 1833. Okay. 1853 was the first Charter Act in which the amount of years, okay, or the number of years for which charter was to be extended was not mentioned. It means at any point of time the company's rules could come to an end. Okay, and this was the time where specific legislative people were given powers in the council of the Governor General. So the beginning of parliamentary form of governance can be seen from 1853. The council of the Governor General, who were having legislative functions, started acting as mini parliament of India whenever a new law was to be passed. So from 1853, all of you know, then came the revolt of 1857, and after this a lot of problems which were being faced by the company, it was then scrapped, and from 1858 we see the direct control of the crown, and Government of India Act 1858 was passed. ठीक है, तो ये आपको बस थोड़ा सा ध्यान रखना है with respect to administration, that there are so many reform acts which will be created in the beginning, और हर किसी का कुछ ना कुछ, we are going to evaluate all their provisions later on, what were the positives, what were the negatives, and how they were eventually transitioned from one to another. So when we talk about administration, one part was this structure, but only structure is not going to create the administration, है ना? Finance आ गया, structure create हो गया. You have to also create the bureaucracy. That bureaucracy includes which kind of people? It includes the office of collector, है ना? Like when we talk about the bureaucracy, they had to create civil services, police, plus along with this, since they wanted the rule of law, court system were also to be created, and all of this done with the efforts of Warren Hastings. Major crucial role, it came from Lord Cornwallis. All of you know the father of civil services is considered as Lord Cornwallis. He is the one. Okay. Plus the manner in which police was to be eventually, the working of the police, it was also refined by Lord Cornwallis. So ये structure करने में Lord Cornwallis has a very major role. Even though when it comes to the court system, Warren Hastings, Lord Cornwallis, along with Lord William Bentinck, all of these worked and fine-tuned the court system of India. High courts were only created after the revolt of 1857. उसके बाद ही उसको बनाया गया था. ठीक है. And even here also, with the period of time, you will see changes आते रहेंगे, है ना. So they also created bureaucracy. Expansion was going on. When this expansion was going on, they was going to have a differential impact on the people of India. This expansion of the British was going to affect the rural areas and the urban areas in a differential manner. Try to imagine, in rural areas, we see the peasants, they are the one who are going to pay the land revenue. So they are going to get exploited to very high level. Tribals, again, their lands will be confiscated by the company. They will not be allowed to follow their natural festivals, or even, as all of you know, they indulge in which kind of agriculture? Slash and burn. That also was restricted because their areas were famous for mining. More resources were in the areas of tribals. That's why from the beginning these peasant and tribals are going to revolt against the British. Like we have the famous rebellions like Sannyasi rebellion. Okay, in 1783 we have Rangpur Dhing in Bengal. Among the tribals, if you see, the famous includes Kol rebellion, Santhal rebellion. So that's why this expansion of the British was going to have large impact on rural areas, because the major economy at that point of time was not urban economy, it was rural economy. So the differential impact was going to change the reaction. But if you see the urban areas, what was the impact on urban area? All the benefit of the new administration, they went majorly to urban areas, the creation of district, है ना, जितना भी फायदा है, creation of employment, education. So all the major benefits of the British Raj, they were going in urban areas, while the major consequences, okay, or exploitation, it was going towards rural areas. That's why here we see revolts and rebellions, and here we see social reform movements. They became the center for them, because here we see education was there. Whatever benefit of the British administration, largely it was cornered in the areas of urbanization. उसी हिसाब से उनका differential impact आया. Yes, Shantanu, correct. Okay, Ulugulu or the Munda rebellion. So this is what you have to understand. These are the basic thing. जब हम syllabus को कभी भी देखते हैं, the whole syllabus is linked in this manner, like British expansion, the creation of the early structure with the basis of these various acts, regulating BITS India, Charter Acts. Okay. Then if we see the economic impact also, initially it was land revenue, settlements, 3 settlements, permanent, Raitwari and Mahalwari. The only difference between these two, you have to understand, first can we increase the tax in the long run? So that could not be increased under the permanent settlement because it means permanent. In 1793, this was done in Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. This was then not extended to many areas because the government realized that it is their fault. है ना? All of you know there is inflation और इन्फ्लेशन के साथ में अगर आप टैक्स को फिनिश कर दोगे तो वो लास्ट में फायदा नहीं होगा. That's why Rivalry was brought in Madras as well as Bombay. In Rivalry, the features were, first of all, no intermediary is going to be there, just like the zamindars in the permanent settlement. Intermediary हटाने की कोशिश की. And second, the land revenue could be revised from 25 to 30 years. Assessment was going to be at the level of the individual farmer or the rayat, and the collection is also going to be at that level. Mahalwari was a little bit different. In Mahalwari, assessment used to be happen at the level of a farmer, but the collection of revenue, this was going to happen at the level of village. So that's why the village is known as Mahal. So these three settlements were brought in. If you see roughly the area in which these settlements were brought in, so roughly 20% of the British India, this was having permanent settlement at the time of independence. Okay, 30% area it was having Mahalwari settlement, and 50% area this was having Rivalry settlement. Okay. Along with this land revenue problem, we also see the commercialization of agriculture, because India's agriculture was now directly linked with international markets. These people used to say, give us the land revenue in cash and nobody is going to pay you cash for your traditional crops. है ना, wheat rice के लिए कोई देने वाला नहीं है. If you have the commercial crops like sugar cane, indigo, etc., all this gave push to commercialization of agriculture. The British policies, the major British policy was to use India as a major center of the raw materials, and that's why on purpose it led to deindustrialization of India, and that's why people shifted from urban area to rural area because they could not sustain themselves in urban area. All of you remember the pandemic era, you know, 2020. What happened in 2020? Because of lockdown, all the economic activities they went away, and that's why people shifted to their rural areas, and government increased the budget of Manrega because so that people can get more work in these area. है ना, तो ब्रिटिश वैसा नहीं कर रहा था. ब्रिटिश was just destroying the industrial setup so that all the product that India consumes should come from outside. So India was to be used more as a market and less as an area of production. This led to increase of landless agrarian laborers because उनके पास वैसे ही land नहीं था. They were working in the urban areas and now they had to shift back to rural areas. Impoverishment, okay, including deindustrialization, decline of trades, and this overall phenomena eventually came to known as drain of wealth. This drain of wealth is going to be explained by me to you tomorrow जब हम discuss करेंगे the phase of moderates. Okay, and then later on we see like in the first half of 19th century, around 1853, first railway was brought in by the British, introduction of telegraph, the overall issue of famines and poverty. What happened? Because of the ruthless policies of extracting revenue even in the times of less production, it led to artificial shortage of the food grains, leading to creation of famines, the artificial famines in India. And finally, whatever industrial setup was created by them in the sectors of jute, in the sectors of cotton, this was now controlled through various holding companies which were known as यूरोपियन बिजनेस एंटरप्राइज. ठीक है, वो हम कल डिस्कस करेंगे उसके बारे में. So I hope this concept is clear to you. कि what was the differential impact in rural areas and what was the impact on the urban area. Rest of the modern discussion we'll do tomorrow. First, let us try to understand the basic questions जो हमने आपको फर्स्ट टेस्ट में दिए थे. ठीक है, those of you who have not written, at least try to create a framework कि framework कैसे बनाते हैं. Let us see these questions. The first question is about Neolithic period. Okay. It's one of the easiest question. Why is Neolithic period considered as a revolution in the Stone Age? So can you tell me the reasons for that? What would be the introduction? Because first of all we have to write introduction. So introduction में क्या लिखेंगे? क्या लिखा आप लोगों ने? क्या लिखा? Exactly पढ़ के बताओ. हाँ. ठीक है. Okay. थोड़ा सा रिफॉर्म करना पड़ेगा, बहुत बड़े सेंटेंसेस में आ गए. यस. ठीक है, ठीक है. देखो, इंट्रोडक्शन कितने तरीके से हो सकता है पहले वो समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. ठीक है. जैसे आपने स्टार्टिंग में टाइम पीरियड लिखा, आपने भी टाइम पीरियड लिखा, है ना. whenever we mention that this is the roughly time period, so this is timeline based introductions, जहां आप सिर्फ एक टाइम लिख देते हो सबसे पहले, that the phase between this to this is considered as Neolithic period. This is a timeline based introduction. ठीक है. इंट्रोडक्शन में सिर्फ इसके बारे में लिखना जरूरी नहीं है. इसके बाद में हो सकता है you have also explained the context, है ना. context में क्या लिखा आपने? that remarkable changes were seen in terms of the production process, okay, village settlement, in terms of the changes of the other aspects of society. So what we have done, along with timeline, we have also managed to introduce with the context of the question. ठीक है. Other ways उनको समझने की कोशिश करते हैं, like this whole concept of Neolithic revolution, this comes from which person? Very Gordon Child. So if we know who has used the word revolution for a specific phase, किसने उस चीज को बोला है? Like suppose if I give you a question that do you think that the Khilji era can be considered as a revolution? So if some archaeologist or some historian has given that concept, you can use his or her name in the introduction. Okay? Why? अभी आप बिल्कुल बेसिक लेवल के आंसर राइटिंग पे हो, तो हम हिस्टोरियोग्राफी के अंदर डेल्व नहीं कर रहे. हमने इसके नेगेटिव साइड्स भी नहीं देखे कि रेवोल्यूशन यूज करना चाहिए या फिर नहीं करना चाहिए. अभी मैं आपसे बेसिक क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया, चलो ठीक है आप इसको जस्टिफाई कर दो एक तरीके से. सो हियर बट द इंट्रोडक्शन कुड हैव बीन दैट द कांसेप्ट ऑफ रेवोल्यूशन हैज बीन अप्लाइड टू नियोलिथिक पीरियड बाय वी गॉर्डन चाइल्ड. थोड़ा सा और अच्छा करना हो, इन हिज बुक Man Makes Himself, and this was done by him because of change in production process from hunting and food gathering to agriculture, plus the beginning of the settled communities. ये आपका इंट्रोडक्शन हो गया. हमने इसमें टाइमलाइन को यूज नहीं किया, इसको हम सेकंड फेज में करेंगे फिर कि भाई ठीक है कि अंदर बॉडी में क्या क्या लिखना है. ओके. सो इंट्रोडक्शन में अभी मैं आपको बस एक दो तरीके के सिखा रहा हूं. एक हमने आपको क्या सिखाया, इफ somebody has introduced that concept, you can connect it to that person. You can even write the book in which that concept was discussed. It makes your introduction more formal. ठीक है, और अच्छा बना देगा आपके इंट्रोडक्शन को. अभी धीरे धीरे करके आपको समझ में आएगा, बहुत तरीके का इंट्रोडक्शन होगी। टाइमलाइन, किसी में सिर्फ टाइमलाइन बेस्ड रहेगा, किसी में कंटेक्स्ट के ऊपर ही फोकस रहेगा, टाइमलाइन होगी ही नहीं, ठीक है। किसी में हम क्या करेंगे, हिस्टोग्राफी को भी डायरेक्टली यूज कर सकते हैं, किसी में हम जो कंसेप्ट किसने दिया है सिर्फ उसको यूज कर सकते हैं। सो अलॉन्ग विद हिस्ट्री ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दीज थिंग्स कैन ऑल्सो बी यूज इन योर जनरल स्टडीज, कैसे इंट्रोडक्शन किया जाता है। ओके, नाउ द क्वेश्चन सेज व्हाई शुड वी यूज द टर्म revolution? So you have to make some headings. Okay, how many of you made subheadings? और सिर्फ पैराग्राफ्स लिखते गए बड़े बड़े, आपने सब हेडिंग्स, आपने लिखा सब हेडिंग्स, ठीक है। तो सब हेडिंग्स क्या क्या होना चाहिए वो भी हमारे दिमाग में आना चाहिए सीधा बात करते ही। तो वन वुड बी इजिली, इट इज ट्रांजिशन टू, सीधा एग्रीकल्चर कर सकते हैं, द ट्रांजिशन टू एग्रीकल्चर। उसमें आपने एक्सप्लेन कर दिया that this was the beginning of the agriculture. We have seen some settlements. कौन कौन से settlements में हमें evidence मिले हैं, कौन सा लिखा, कुछ sites mention किया जहां पे हमें agriculture के remnants मिले हैं? Yes, लाहौरा देवा, very good. Then मेहरगढ़, then कोल्डी हवा, ठीक है। सो जब भी आप आंसर लिख रहे हो एक चीज आपको बहुत क्लियरली समझनी पड़ेगी, ये तो सिर्फ आपने एक आइडिया दिया है, ठीक है। टू जस्टिफाई इट यू हैव टू आल्सो मेंशन द सोर्स। इफ यू आर नॉट मेंशनिंग सोर्सेस इन योर आंसर्स देन आप सिर्फ कहानी सुना रहे हो। इफ यू आर मेंशनिंग सोर्स, try to understand, this is going to be very relevant in your paper 1. In paper 1 mentioning the source is very important. All of us had already understood that before the Vedic period we only have archaeological sources. So here we can mention the archaeological sources, that excavations have been carried out at, कभी चार्ट भी बना सकते हो, यहाँ पे बना दिया excavations like Koldi Hava, we have found evidence of rice. Mehergarh, we have found evidence of cotton. अच्छा लगेगा, आपने एक तरफ पॉइंट लिखा उसके साथ में एक छोटा सा सोर्स बना दिया, like this. This is your answer copy. यह आपका क्वेश्चन हो गया, ठीक है। यहाँ से आपने आंसर शुरू किया, इंट्रोडक्शन विल बी ऑफ 3 to 3.5 लाइन्स। फिर आपने यहाँ पहला सब हेडिंग बनाया, यहाँ आपने पॉइंट लिखा और यहाँ पे आपने सोर्स मेंशन कर दिया, ठीक है। ट्राई टू बी इनोवेटिव, वन मोर लेवल इफ यू विश टू। आप ये कर छोड़ के यहाँ पे पहले मैप भी बना सकते हो। तो मैप बना के क्या होगा, आप इजीली बता सकते हो। लाइक सपोज अगर आपको नियोलिथिक एरिया यहाँ सिर्फ यहाँ का दिखाना है तो आप उसको भी दिखा सकते हो, दैट दीज आर द प्रोमिनेंट एरियाज फ्रॉम वेयर वी फाउंड द नियोलिथिक एक्सकवेशन, दीज आर द मेजर नियोलिथिक साइट्स। आपने डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ साइट्स दिखा दिया मैप के अंदर। सो व्हाइल राइटिंग आंसर्स काइंडली रिमेंबर द रूल नंबर 1, whatever point you write please substantiate it. In paper 1 we have to mention the sources. बिना sources कभी भी अच्छा आंसर नहीं बनने वाला। इंट्रोडक्शन में आपने गाइडलाइंस में लिखना है that we should try to create varieties of introduction. This is a skill which all of you are going to master with the period of time. It's not going to happen in one day. कभी भी कोई क्वेश्चन देख के अपने दिमाग में 2 इंट्रोडक्शन बनाने का सोचो कि भाई दूसरा इंट्रोडक्शन और क्या हो सकता है इसमें। एंड लाइक सपोज इन पेपर 1 में आपको टोटल क्वेश्चंस रफली 14 के आसपास लिखने होते हैं अलॉन्ग विद मैप। सो द टोटल डाइवर्सिटी ऑफ इंट्रोडक्शन मैक्सिमम कितना कर सकते हैं 14, बट उतना हो नहीं पाएगा कभी। सो वी कैन डिवाइड दिस 14 इंट्रोडक्शन इनटू 3 to 4 कैटेगरीज। कभी डेफिनेशन लिख दिया, कभी टाइमलाइन से स्टार्ट कर लिया, कभी हिस्टोरियोग्राफी से स्टार्ट कर लिया, तो ऐसे कर करके वी कैन क्रिएट सब कैटेगरीज ऑफ इंट्रोडक्शन एंड यू हैव टू बी कॉन्शियस अबाउट इट, बिकॉज even in the model answers which will be provided you for the test that you will give after the ancient का पहले 15 दिन के बाद, तो वहां पे ऐसे आपके लिए कोई 15 इंट्रोडक्शन नहीं लिख सकता. इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल. दिस इज समथिंग विच यू हैव टू लर्न इन द क्लासेस. ओके, आपके हैंडआउट पे भी ऊपर अच्छे अच्छे इंट्रोडक्शन होंगे, वो भी आप क्रैम कर सकते हो. बिकॉज इनिशियली तो यू हैव टू क्रैम, देन ओनली यू कैन यूज इट इन डिफरेंट प्लेसेस. इट्स जस्ट लाइक एबीसी को क्रैम किया तभी तो हमें वर्ड्स बनाना आया. Similarly, we have to cram some good lines, create subheading, kindly write it down. These are the directions which you should have. Subheadings जितना अच्छे से create करोगे उतना अच्छा आंसर आपका लगेगा. Presentation improve हो जाएगा. Map you can create, chart you can create, and all of this you have to do within a defined set of time. It should not be you're taking half an hour for writing this answer. Okay. How much time can we take? If there is 10 marker question, you can take 8 minutes. I'm not going to say start following it from today, but make it your benchmark. कितने time में होना चाहिए, ठीक है? If any 15 marker is there, so roughly take 10 minutes. If any 20 marker question is there, then you can take 12 minutes. ठीक है? बेंचमार्क क्रिएट कर लो. अभी तो हमने आपको सारे 10 मार्कर्स दिए थे, 2-2 पेज में आपको लिखने थे. इफ देयर इज 15 मार्कर 3 पेज हो जाएगा आपका, 20 मार्कर 4 पेज हो जाएगा. तो इवेंचुअली इसी तरीके से आपने आंसर को लिखना सीखना पड़ेगा. कितने टाइम के अंदर हमें लिखना है. दिस शुड बी अ लॉन्ग टर्म टारगेट. टेक 6 months फॉर दिस, नॉट एन इशू, बट एटलीस्ट स्टार्ट फ्रॉम समवेयर. द फर्स्ट स्टेप इज स्टार्टिंग plus knowing the fundamental of each and everything. ठीक है. The first subheading can be transition to agriculture. What could be the second important heading? Very good. Or you can say sedentary life. Sedentary life means now people were now staying at a specific place. Or you can also put the heading of village settlements. Previously they were nomads, now they were living a sedentary life. Then tell me more subheadings. Online students, if you have any subheadings, kindly tell me in the chat box. Yes Shantanu, we can use them. Yes. इन्वेंशन और डिस्कवरी में डिफरेंस होता है. बनाया गया था ना, खोजा थोड़ा ना गया था. When somebody is find out, it is discovery. जब बनाया जाता है, it is invention. Yes. ठीक है. पहले हम लार्जर पॉइंट्स को हमेशा कैटेगराइज करना है. ये भी एक चीज समझ लो, जो अच्छा इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है वो पहले आना चाहिए. So that like suppose if I ask you any question, जो काम की चीज है वो अगर आप थर्ड पॉइंट में बोलोगे तब तक तो मेरा इंटरेस्ट खत्म हो जाएगा. व्हील इज अ बिगर इन्वेंशन देन पॉटरी. ठीक है. इसमें तो आप कहीं भी डाल लो, अभी ऐसे कोई इतना फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. बट एज अ रूल, लाइक सपोज आई आस्क ए क्वेश्चन, द रीजन फॉर द डाउनफॉल ऑफ मौर्य एम्पायर, तो पहले इंपॉर्टेंट एरिया जो रीजन होगा वो कहाँ आएगा? ऊपर आएगा. और जो लेस इंपॉर्टेंट है वो नीचे आने वाला है. बस ये आप डिग्रीज को समझ लो धीरे धीरे करके, बिकॉज आंसर राइटिंग इज अ लॉन्ग जर्नी. इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू हैपन इन 1 or 2 डे. आप मेरे साथ लग के चलेंगे ना 4-5 महीने क्लासेस में हम. और आंसर राइटिंग में क्या रहता है कि भाई हर सब्जेक्ट में थोड़ा थोड़ा डिफरेंस है. एंशिएंट की थोड़ी एक अलग तरीके की है, मिडिएवल में थोड़ा और चेंज है, मॉडर्न में और चेंज होगा. वहाँ हम बहुत सारी कॉन्टेम्प्रेरी कमेंट्स को भी मगअप करना शुरू करेंगे. वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में और थोड़ा डिफरेंट है. तो हर किसी पार्ट का आंसर राइटिंग थोड़ा डिफरेंट रहने वाला है. तो उस पर हम फोकस बनाए रखेंगे, बिकॉज योर एंड रिजल्ट, द रिजल्ट ऑफ द इंस्टीट्यूट्स, इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन हाउ बेटर आंसर्स यू राइट. आपके फाइनल मार्क्स, आपकी फाइनल नॉलेज ऑफ हिस्ट्री कहाँ चेक होगी? थ्रू योर आंसर्स. So this is the final product which you have to create. Be very aware about it. रोज जाके एक आधा आंसर खुद से लिखो, पूछो खुद से कि हाँ 2 इंट्रोडक्शन कैसे लिख सकते हैं. These kinds of problems stay with the student even after 3 attempt, 4 attempt, 5 attempt. जो मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ ना कि इंट्रोडक्शन ढंग से नहीं लिखा जा रहा है, ये 4 अटेम्प्ट वालों के साथ भी दिक्कत है। इट्स नॉट लाइक यू आर द बिगिनर तो आपको लगेगा नहीं नहीं सीख जाएंगे बहुत बाद में। इफ कॉन्शियस एफर्ट इज नॉट देयर, नहीं सीखते हैं लोग। तो आप इन सारी बारीक चीजों को समझना शुरू करो कि हाँ सब हेडिंग बनाना है, इंट्रोडक्शन अच्छा बनाने की कोशिश करनी है, ट्रांजिशन कैसे होना चाहिए पॉइंट्स के बीच में, कौन से हिस्टोरियन कौन से आर्कोलॉजिस्ट इज लिंक टू दैट स्पेसिफिक टॉपिक, वी शुड रिमेंबर देयर नेम्स। ओके, टेल मी मोर सब हेडिंग्स। यस, so we see invention of wheel, along with this see expansion of trade and commerce, then we see wheel based pottery, that can also be written, then what else, domestication of animals already हो चुका था, ठीक है। हाँ, तो here we see the now more evolvement of the village life, बड़ी सोसाइटी बनने लग गई यहाँ पे, ठीक है। So at least 4 to 5 dimension you have to remember with respect to revolution. अभी मैं आपको इसकी सेकेंड पार्ट नहीं समझा रहा हूँ, which will discuss once we finish off the आपका core subject, because the whole concept of revolution अगर आप बेसिक लेवल पे समझोगे तो क्या होता है, it means fundamental changes, okay, and that too sudden. sudden का मतलब समझते हो, एकदम से होना। but if you see the time period of Neolithic period, what's the time period, 7000 to 3000, 4000 साल कैसे चुटकी में चले गए। okay, it means rather than using the word revolution we should use the word revolutionary changes, but they had evolved over a period of time, plus it did not start in all the places of India at the same time. This is critical examination of the concept, बट ये हम ज्यादा फोकस करेंगे बाद में, अभी तो हम ज्यादातर कहानियों की तरह ही इसको ले रहे हैं। व्हाट कुड बी रिटन इन द कंक्लूजन, व्हाट कैन बी राइट इन द कंक्लूजन। सो नियोलिथिक पीरियड इसको हम आगे से कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं, that it created the circumstances for the surplus of agriculture, which evolved even further in the Chalcolithic period and was responsible for the creation of or urbanization in the coming times. So what we did, we took that concept and connected it with the future consequences, because as we had discussed at that point of time, without villages, without this surplus of agriculture, can we have cities? We cannot have cities. So we have just connected it with this. Okay, right now we are not going too much into the complications. अभी हम बिल्कुल basic level के answers मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, इसको further improve करते चलेंगे with the period of time. Now let us see the second question. Yes, Lina, that is also you can write like the polish tool. At this point of time, the tools also changed. Initially, we had in the Paleolithic core, flake and blade. Mesolithic में कौन सा था? Microlith. And this was the time of the beginning of self tools, tools with handles. Okay, these tools developed during the Neolithic period. So you can also write one subheading of evolution of tools. Very good. Yes. सिविलाइजेशन देखो नहीं लिख पाएंगे, कल्चर तो लिख ही सकते हो, उसमें क्या इशू है। कल्चर इज मोर अबाउट द इनर थिंग्स, सिविलाइजेशन शुड हैव टू कंपोनेंट, वन स्क्रिप्ट, सेकंड इज अर्बनाइजेशन. सो यू कैन से इट क्रिएटेड द स्पेस फॉर दैट, इट डिड नॉट क्रिएट अ सेंस ऑफ दैट, स्पेस क्रिएट कर दिया, बिकॉज अब आपको खाने के लिए इधर से उधर भागना नहीं है. नाउ यू कैन फोकस ऑन एजुकेशन, नाउ यू कैन फोकस ऑन क्रिएशन ऑफ सिटीज. So that's why हमने कहा, but it created a station for surplus of agriculture, which is a necessity for the next phase of urbanization. So that's why Neolithic phase is considered very important. Okay, then we see the Dhamma policy of Ashoka. तो बहुत ही आसान है. In the introduction, you can write what Dhamma is. So Dhamma is a set of do's or don'ts which are explained by Ashoka through the use of its pillar as well as rock inscription. तो हमने ये एक बेसिक सा इंट्रोडक्शन कर दिया. ठीक है, इंट्रोडक्शन में आप और क्या लिखा आपने इंट्रोडक्शन? हैव यू रिटन इट? लिखा है इसको? ये वाला नहीं लिखा. ठीक है, लिख सकते हो बिल्कुल. वो आपका कंटेक्स्ट टाइप का इंट्रोडक्शन हो गया, जहां मैंने बेसिकली डिफाइन किया है, वहां आपने कंटेक्स्ट एक्सप्लेन कर दिया दैट आफ्टर द कलिंगा वॉर, है ना, अशोका वेंट थ्रू अ चेंज ऑफ हार्ट एंड ही शिफ्टेड हिज कंप्लीट गवर्नेंस ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ द पॉलिसी ऑफ धम्मा. तो आपने कंटेक्स्ट कर दिया, तो वो भी अच्छा तरीका है, वो भी कर सकते हो. ठीक है, देखो सबसे डिफिकल्ट तरीके के इंट्रोडक्शन होते हैं अच्छा कंटेक्स्ट निकाल के लेके आना. सबसे ज्यादा रेलिवेंट भी मुझे वही लगता है. डेफिनेशन तो कोई भी लिख सकता है, डेफिनेशन में दिक्कत थोड़ा ना है. टाइमलाइन लिखने को लिख दो, अशोका का टाइम पीरियड भी लिख सकते हो. अशोका रूल्ड फ्रॉम दिस टू दिस एंड ही वाज अ मेजर मोनार्क इन द हिस्ट्री ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया एंड वन ऑफ द इंपॉर्टेंट आउटकम ऑफ दैट वाज धम्मा पॉलिसी. ये सब तो कहानियां हैं, कहीं भी लिख दोगे इट मींस जीरो इनोवेशन. लेकिन जो आप बोलो ना कंटेक्स्ट, वो सबसे इनोवेटिव वही होता है जहां आप कंटेक्स्ट का मीनिंग निकाल के लेके आ रहे हो, या फिर इस तरीके से डिफाइन कर रहे हो कि वो बहुत ही अच्छे से उसके मीनिंग को निकाल के ले आएगा. ठीक है, और दोनों को मर्ज भी कर सकते हो अगर 20 मार्कर हो, है ना. आप रफली याद रखो, इफ इट इज अ 10 मार्कर तो 3 लाइन्स के अंदर इंट्रोडक्शन फिनिश करना है विद इन 3 लाइन्स. इफ इट इज 15 मार्कर 4 लाइन्स, और अगर 20 मार्कर है तो 5 लाइन तक हम जा सकते हैं. उससे ज्यादा लिखोगे तो फिर वो बहुत ज्यादा लिख दोगे, शुरुआत में आंसर ही लिखना शुरू कर दोगे, पॉइंट्स खराब हो जाएंगे आपके, वो आप बॉडी स्ट्रक्चर में लेके आओगे. हाँ कर सकते हो, लिख सकते हो, कोई इशू नहीं है. लिख के दिखाओ. हाँ हाँ ठीक है. ये सोचो, देखो शुरुआत में आप लोग बहुत नए हो, इस चीज पे बहुत फोकस करो कि व्हाट आर द स्किल्स व्हिच आर रिक्वायर्ड टू बिकम सक्सेसफुल इन एनी ऑप्शनल. तो हमने बेसिक पेपर 1 का ओवरव्यू ले लिया ऑलरेडी. हमें अब समझ में आ जाना चाहिए यार कि इंट्रोडक्शन अच्छा करने के मार्क्स होते हैं, मैप बनाने के मार्क्स मिलने वाले हैं, अच्छा चार्ट्स बनाने के हैं, अच्छे हिस्टोरियन याद कर लेंगे उसका भी फायदा कर सकते हैं. ये चीजों पे फोकस करना पड़ेगा. अब देखो इस क्वेश्चन को धम्मा पॉलिसी. नाउ then you explain the important सब पॉइंट्स. क्या क्या सब पॉइंट्स हैं धम्मा पॉलिसी के? ठीक है, तो अगर आप चाहो तो और स्पेसिफिकली तरीके से लिख सकते हो दैट इवन अशोका आस्क्ड दैट व्हाट इज धम्मा इन सेकंड पिलर एडिक्ट एंड ही एक्सप्लेन्ड इट इन 7 पिलर एडिक्ट कि हाँ क्या मीनिंग है. तो इट इज अ सेट ऑफ डूज एंड डोंट्स जिसके अंदर क्या आता है, लाइक रिस्पेक्ट टुवर्ड्स पेरेंट्स, है ना. तो पहले आपने धम्मा को एक्सप्लेन कर दिया, फिर उस पॉलिसी को कहाँ कहाँ उसने यूज किया फिर हम वो मेंशन करेंगे. तो यहाँ हमने क्या किया, रिस्पेक्ट टुवर्ड्स पेरेंट्स एज वेल एज ब्राह्मणास. सेकंड, काइंड बिहेवियर टुवर्ड्स स्लेव्स, एनिमल्स एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, वो सारा पार्ट उसके अंदर आ जाएगा. Then working for the welfare of others, ठीक है, वो उसके अंदर जाओ. तो पहले थोड़ा सेट ऑफ चीजें डिफाइन कर दो कि हाँ धम्मा के अंदर क्या क्या चीजें उन्होंने इंक्लूड कर ली. Then comes the part of how this Dhamma became the part of the policy of the state. ठीक है, अब उसके अंदर हम क्या क्या करेंगे. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल द प्रोपगेशन ऑफ धम्मा. थोड़े बहुत वर्ड्स हैं जो आपको समझने पड़ेंगे, जैसे कि अभी आपने वो नहीं पढ़ा है. द प्रीवियस पॉलिसी ऑफ वॉरफेयर इट वाज नोन एज पॉलिसी ऑफ भेरी घोषा एंड फ्रॉम भेरी घोषा ही शिफ्टेड टुवर्ड्स धम्मा घोषा, है ना. धम्मा घोषा मींस द पॉलिसी ऑफ पीस। ठीक है, तो ये जो धम्मा पॉलिसी के पार्ट में आ जाएगा, दैट इज द प्रोपगेशन ऑफ धम्मा इवेंचुअली थ्रू द क्रिएशन ऑफ bureaucrats like Dhamma Mahamatras who were created. Second, killing of or various sects. We had discussed that 6th century BC, see the eruption of 62 sects. All these sects were criticizing each other, and for the sake of tolerance among them, Dhamma policy was instructed कि भाई हर किसी को रिकॉग्नाइज करने दो कि हाउ धम्मा इज अ वेरी सुपीरियर पॉलिसी टू ऑल द अदर्स. देन दिस धम्मा पॉलिसी वाज इवन गोइंग टू बिकम पार्ट ऑफ द पॉलिसी ऑफ फॉरेन पॉलिसी ऑफ द मौर्यस. द मैनर इन विच श्रीलंका, द मैनर इन विच द वेरियस अदर स्टेट्स ऑफ वेस्ट एशिया इंक्लूडिंग सीरिया, एपिक्यूरस एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, all of them they started identifying themselves with the policy of धम्मा. तो धम्मा का इंटरनल पार्ट, एक्सटर्नल पार्ट दोनों लिख सकते हैं. पहले आप एक्सप्लेन कर दोगे कि व्हाट इज द कंटेंट ऑफ धम्मा, है ना, उसकी एक लंबी सी लिस्ट है. स्टार्टिंग में इंट्रोडक्शन एंड कंक्लूजन में क्या कर सकते हैं, दैट दिस धम्मा पॉलिसी वाज एन इनोवेटिव मेजर टेकन बाय अशोका एंड इट कंटिन्यूड टू बी प्रोमिनेंट थ्रू आउट his reign and even later on in Indian history, like when Akbar is going to come up with Sulh-e-Kul. So this policy remained a part of Indian tradition, reflecting itself time and again, like the Sulh-e-Kul policy of Akbar. तो कभी कभार किसी क्वेश्चन में when we have the opportunity, we can connect it with the future events also, or if some current context can be linked with it, है ना. Dhamma was a kind of soft power. So India today has more soft power or hard power? We have soft power. So this Dhamma was an mostly expression of soft power, which remains even an important tool of India's foreign policy. In some questions of ancient India, you're going to get this chance of connecting it with the current events. We'll do it in the classes. ठीक है, तो वो आप कर सकते हो. And this is going to provide you half marks extra than others. Yes, Leena, respect to all religion, non-violence, all this is going to become part of Dhamma policy. And then the next part. Yes. हाँ, एडिक्ट्स दिखा सकते हो आप इसके अंदर. हाँ, ये भी कर सकते हो. और इसमें दूसरा तरीका ये भी है कि इफ यू स्पेसिफिकली रिमेंबर कि 13th रॉक एडिक्ट में क्या लिखा है, 7th पिलर एडिक्ट में क्या लिखा है, 2nd पिलर एडिक्ट में क्या लिखा है, तो उसका वो भी दिखा सकते हो किस कहाँ से धम्मा का पता चलता है उनको, इफ यू हैव दैट मच स्पेसिफिक फैक्चुअल नॉलेज. सो फैक्ट्स along with concept and execution, this is how you are going to become a topper. आप कभी भी ये मत सोचना कि बिना फैक्ट्स के आप बहुत अच्छे आंसर लिख पाओगे, नहीं. मिनिमल लेवल ऑफ फैक्ट्स आर रिक्वायर्ड. When you have minimal level of facts, then you can increase the you can say impact of those facts by connecting it with the help of your concept, and finally by making these map, charts, etc. you can improve marks. एक आधा नंबर वैसे ही एक्स्ट्रा मिल जाएगा. अच्छा इंट्रोडक्शन, अच्छा कंक्लूजन आपको सेपरेट करने वाला है from the other people. Okay, so this skill you should be consciously dedicated to these things. इसलिए मैं आपको फर्स्ट डे ही बता रहा हूँ, ये सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट पूरे फाउंडेशन कोर्स में यही रहने वाला है. पर डे बेसिस पे आपको इम्प्रूव करना है एंड बी अवेयर अबाउट इट. लेट अस सी द थर्ड क्वेश्चन. यस, देखो अभी तो हमने आपको बस वैसे बेसिक लेवल पे दिए. आपको पेपर 1 में 10 मार्कर मिलेंगे भी नहीं, वहाँ पे आपको 15 मार्कर मिलता है या फिर 20 मार्कर ही आता है. तो अभी हमने बस आपके लिए इजी रखा कि अगर मैं अभी आपको 20 मार्कर दे दूँ, 4 पेज तो वैसे भी नहीं लिखे जाएंगे, है ना. अभी ये पूरा ढंग से पढ़ा भी नहीं है ना सारे टॉपिक, सिर्फ मोस्टली इंट्रोडक्शन और थोड़ा सा बेसिक पार्ट हमने कवर किया है. इसलिए भी हमने शुरुआत में आपको उतना परेशान नहीं किया. क्वेश्चन तो देखो बहुत डिफिकल्ट बन सकते हैं धीरे धीरे, बट वो जब आप उस लेवल पे आ जाओगे तब करेंगे. अभी आप बस लिखना सीखो कि इतने टाइम में मैं कितना लिख सकता हूँ. थर्ड क्वेश्चन आई थिंक इज वेरी इजी. व्हाई इल्तुतमिश कंसीडर्ड एज द रियल फाउंडर? ये तो हमने क्लास में कवर ही किया था. So with respect to Iltutmish, you can, in the introduction, you can write about the background of Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate was established by Qutbuddin Aibak in 1206, but this state was in a vulnerable condition as it died by 1210. The next opportunity, or the, even you can say, challenge, was overtaken by Iltutmish by becoming its administrative arranger, by becoming the stabilizer, and that's why he is considered as the real founder. तो आप इंट्रोडक्शन में भी इसको एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हो. देन यू कैन मेक वेरियस सब हेडिंग, डिफरेंट स्टेप्स. हमने क्लास में किया भी था ना, इंटरनल पॉलिसी, एक्सटर्नल पॉलिसी, वो सारा आप उसको डिफरेंशिएट करना शुरू करोगे. लाइक व्हेन इट कम्स टू इंटरनल मेजर्स टेकन बाय हिम, दैट इंक्लूड्स द रिप्रेशन ऑफ, क्या क्या किया इन्होंने इंटरनल मेजर्स में, क्रिएशन ऑफ तुर्कानी चिहलगानी, द ग्रुप ऑफ 40, दैट वाज डन बाय हिम. सेकंड, द giving the duties to the Iktadas or the reformation of Ikta system. Third, even the suppression of some of the Rajput principalities. When it comes to external challenges, in the external measures, what he did, he defeated Tajuddin Yildiz, okay, defeated Kubacha, as well as remained diplomatically neutral when Genghis Khan came to the border of India. Okay, those were his external measures. Then with respect to economic measures, you can write, yes, so here what he did, monetization of economy was done. Tanka and Jeetal were the coins which were issued by him. Okay, even with respect to cultural foundation of the state, he completed the construction of Qutub Minar, also constructed the famous reservoirs like Hauze, Samshi. तो ऐसे ऐसे आपको डिफरेंट कैटेगरीज में पॉलिटी, इकोनॉमी, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा उसको पूरा डाल देना है. ठीक है. प्लस हिज रेन वाज फ्रॉम 1211 टू 36, सो ही वाज एबल टू क्रिएट अ काइंड ऑफ स्टेबिलिटी फॉर मोर देन 2 decades. ओके, यस. हाँ लिख सकते. हाँ, तो उसमें वो सारे मोस्टली उसी में आ जाएंगे. पहले पॉलिटिकली लिखेंगे. इफ देयर इज नो पॉलिटी, इकोनॉमी तो कहाँ से आएगी. ठीक है, पहले हमने पॉलिटी को एस्टैब्लिश किया ना इन्होंने. अभी हमने डिफरेंट फेसेट्स ऑफ इल्तुतमिश हमने कवर करने हैं. तो फर्स्ट हम स्टार्ट करेंगे द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट वन, बिकॉज सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट क्या था कि भाई कम से कम एक ब्यूरोक्रेसी क्रिएट करनी है, एंड दैट वाज द क्रिएशन ऑफ द तुर्काने चिहलगानी. देन ब्यूरोक्रेसी हैज बीन क्रिएटेड, different functions should be allotted to them, so that was the reformation of Ikta system. ठीक है. Plus those people who are now raising the banner of revolt, who were subdued by Qutbuddin Aibak, उनको भी करना है. तो वो सारे इनके इंटरनल मेजर्स के अंदर आ जाएगा. और यहाँ पे इसको चेंज करके आप इसको पॉलिटिकल कंसोलिडेशन भी कर सकते हो, ऐसा कोई दिक्कत वाला बात नहीं है. यहाँ पे इसका फॉरेन वाला पार्ट आ जाएगा. तो आपको 4-5 पार्ट में इल्तुतमिश को डिवाइड करना है और फिर इसको लिखना है. In conclusion में आप क्या कर सकते हो, that through his various methods Iltutmish was able to stabilize the foundation of Delhi Sultanate, which created the ground for consolidation by Balban later on. ठीक है ना. आप कनेक्ट कर सकते हो एक सुल्तान को दूसरे से. यस. हाँ कर सकते हो उसमें. हाँ, और नहीं तो इसको वो भी कर सकते हो आप, अगर स्टार्टिंग में क्वेश्चन में डिफरेंशिएट करना चाहो फाउंडर वर्सेस रियल फाउंडर, तो उसका भी एक पैराग्राफ बना सकते हो इन द इनिशियल कि भाई फाउंडर क्या होता है, दोज हु एस्टैब्लिश, लाइक इट वाज डन बाय Qutbuddin Aibak. बट Qutbuddin Aibak was just outlining the arrangement of the state. He was not able to create any stable structure. वो स्ट्रक्चर किसने क्रिएट किया, इल्तुतमिश ने. ठीक है. जब हम मेन क्लासेस में आएंगे तो कुछ कुछ क्रिटिसिज्म भी आएगा इल्तुतमिश का. क्रिटिसिज्म क्या क्या आएगा, जैसे कि इवन आफ्टर हिज डेथ क्या स्टेबलाइज हुआ दिल्ली सल्तनत? नो. वी सी तुर्काने चिहलगानी बिकेम अ वेरी पावरफुल इंस्टीट्यूशन, एंड इवन हिज ओन विल व्हेन ही वांटेड his daughter to become the sultan, it was not accepted by the religious class. वो हम बाद में देखेंगे, अभी हम बस बेसिक कंसेप्ट्स को जानने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, तो ज़्यादा उसमें घुसना नहीं है. Role of Akbar in the consolidation of the Mughal Empire, I think that is also very easy. Yes, Shantanu, correct? Yes, yes. Leena, you can mention the Ashoka's edicts. So, consolidation of the Mughal Empire. क्या-क्या step लिया by Akbar? So his reign starts with the second battle of Panipat. Okay, this was the initial part, 1556 itself. When Vikramaditya Hemu, he was defeated in the second battle of Panipat. Thereafter, creation of various institutions, which includes like Mansabdari institution for bureaucracy, creation of N.A. Dhasala, okay? These are the two most powerful ones. Then we can write about his religious policy, in which you can write all those reforms. Abolition of jizya, pilgrimage tax was also abolished. Forceful sati, it was not allowed. The policy of Sulh-e-Kul, all this can be written in this. Then the expansion of Mughals towards the Deccan, like the area of Khandesh, etc., that was done by him. His Rajput policy, yes, we should also write this. So all these things we have to write. Consolidation of Mughal Empire. Conclusion में क्या कर पाएंगे? Introduction में नहीं तो हम क्या कर पाएंगे? Yes. वो एकदम से इंट्रोडक्शन में लिखने की जरूरत नहीं, बिकॉज वो ना फिर हम क्वेश्चन के काउंटर करंट पैदा कर देंगे. क्वेश्चन बोल रहा है क्या किया इन्होंने, कंसोलिडेट किया, आप शुरुआत में बोलो नहीं 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 ये तो बच्चा था, है ना. तो कभी भी काउंटर पार्ट ना इंट्रोडक्शन में मत लिखो, बेसिक से उसके बाद जो पैराग्राफ होगा उसमें लिख दो एवोल्यूशन ऑफ द पॉलिसीज ऑफ अकबर. सो इनिशियल 4 to 5 year बैरम खान वाज द रेजेंट ऑफ अकबर. लाइक इवन दिस सेकंड बैटल ऑफ पानीपत, इट वाज नॉट द अकबर हु वाज फाइटिंग, इट वाज बैरम खान, है ना, उन्होंने किया. तो वो वहां पे मेंशन कर सकते हो, तो वो अच्छा तरीका है. लेकिन इंट्रोडक्शन में मत लिखो, नहीं तो पूरे क्वेश्चन को हम ना डिफीट कर देंगे वहीं पे, बिकॉज किया तो है ही ना इन्होंने बाद में. ही हैज अ लॉन्ग रेन ऑफ 50 years starting from 1556 all the way up to 1605. You can even mention the sources in the introduction, that the information about the reign of Akbar कहाँ से मिलता है हमें उसके बारे में? From Akbar Nama, which is written by Abul Fazl. तो sources जरूर mention करो in paper 1. It is very important because the history, whatever interpretation we have, it's on the basis of sources, and still that's something which we need to write. ये सारा इसमें आ जाएगा. Then comes the final question, role of Shivaji in the establishment of Maratha Empire. So in the introduction you can write about the role of Shivaji, that Shivaji was a great warrior. Initially his career, he served the Deccani states, okay, and with the period of time he established Savrajya in 1674. This can be a basic form of introduction, okay. Then if you know any form of source from where we get the information about Shivaji, like there is Shabashad Bakhar, वहां से हमें पता चलता है, इट्स अ लॉन्ग पोएम, ठीक है, वो इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड करता है ऑन द एक्सप्लॉइट्स ऑफ शिवाजी, ओके. और शिव भारत, दैट आल्सो प्रोवाइड इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट शिवाजी. तो ये ना जब हम क्लासेस करेंगे हर किसी में, तो आपको सबसे स्टार्टिंग में बताऊंगा कि इसका इंफॉर्मेशन कहाँ से आया है, और आप भी उस चीज को पिक कर लेना, उसकी एक लिस्ट बनाते चलो कि इफ ए क्वेश्चन कम्स ऑन स्पेसिफिक पर्सनालिटी, which are the major sources of the reign of that, you should be able to remember it and use it as and when required. Okay, this is a very important quality which all of you need to learn. So in 1674 he created Savrajya. We had already discussed what all was done by him for the establishment of the Maratha Empire. First of all, the initial fight with the Mughals, which was done, then second, when we talk specifically about his administration, we have the Ashtpradhan system, okay. Second, very good taxation system, in which the various kinds of levies on the peasants, they were taken away, and a uniform tax of 2/5 or 40% of the land revenue was considered as the share of the state. Third, you can write about the creation of army, navy, है ना, वो आप लिख सकते हो वहाँ पे. Fourth, you can talk about the role of the forts, because forts were something which were very important in the administration of Shivaji. So forts were created at various strategic places, and this helped in the guerrilla method of warfare. ठीक है, तो ये सारी चीजें आपको इसके एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ऑफ द मराठा एम्पायर में लिखना है. कंक्लूजन में यू कैन इवन राइट अबाउट द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ द मराठास और द क्रिएशन ऑफ एम्पायर बाय शिवाजी. So once the empire was created in 1674, okay, by the early 18th century, means by 1720, Marathas became the major powers in India, and this provided the chance for the expansion of the Marathas under Balaji Vishwanath, Balaji Bajirao I and Bajirao II. ठीक है, and until the reversal in the third battle of Panipat. So the forces let loose by Shivaji, the creation of the administration was bound to have a long-term impact on the prestige of Marathas. So लगभग 100 साल का एक अच्छा रेन है of the Marathas. ठीक है, तो शिवाजी के बारे में सब लिख सकते हो आप. So कुछ फंडामेंटल समझ में आया of आंसर राइटिंग. Just write down what all you have to learn. In introduction, you have to bring in diversity. Like suppose if I see 5 questions, तो कम से कम सारे एक जैसे नहीं होने चाहिए. जैसे क्वेश्चन आ जाए अकबर पे शिवाजी, अकबर वॉज अ ग्रेट किंग, शिवाजी वॉज अ ग्रेट किंग, ऐसे सारे इंट्रोडक्शन लिखोगे तो फिर वो बच्चों वाला हो जाता है ना. इट इज नॉट ऑफ यूपीएससी स्टैंडर्ड. तो डाइवर्सिफाई कि कैसे कैसे हम डिफरेंट तरीके के इंट्रोडक्शन लिख पाएंगे. कहीं पे कंटेक्स्ट के बेसिस पे लिखेंगे, समवेयर विल राइट ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ टाइमलाइन, समवेयर वी कैन इवन यूज द नेम ऑफ द हिस्टोरियंस और हिस्टोरियोग्राफी. ठीक है, तो डाइवर्सिटी बनाने की कोशिश करो अपने इंट्रोडक्शन में. समवेयर यू कैन इवन डायरेक्टली यूज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ द कंसेप्ट ऑल्सो इफ इट अलाउस. ब्रिंग दैट डाइवर्सिटी. This is often going to be the most difficult part. सबसे ज्यादा आंसर राइटिंग में टाइम वेस्ट आपका कहाँ होगा? इंट्रोडक्शन में. खुद करके देखा अभी? स्टार्ट जब करते हो तो पेन चलता नहीं है, तो थोड़ा बहुत रट्टाफिकेशन यहाँ करना जरूरी है. कुछ अच्छे वर्ड्स रटने पड़ेंगे, कुछ अच्छे लाइन याद करनी पड़ेंगी, उन्हें बस फिल इन द ब्लैंक्स करनी पड़ेंगे. ठीक है. अच्छा, शिवाजी वॉज नॉट ओनली अ ग्रेट एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर बट एन इफेक्टिव मिलिट्री जनरल. अब आगे से सिर्फ शिवाजी को रिप्लेस कर दिया अकबर से, अकबर को रिप्लेस कर दिया चोला से. ये लाइनें रटनी पड़ेंगी. ठीक है. खुद से कितना अंग्रेजी लेके आओगे भाई? हम लोग अंग्रेज तो है नहीं. इन द एंड हर किसी की फर्स्ट जो लैंग्वेज है, इट इज नॉट इंग्लिश, इट मे बी हिंदी, इट मे बी असमीज, इट मे बी उर्दू, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. सो यू हैव टू लर्न द फॉर्मेट. ना कि जब भी नियोलिथिक पीरियड पे आया तो आपको समझ में आ गया, अच्छा टाइमलाइन लिखना तो बस याद करना है. हाँ, द फेज फ्रॉम 7000 BC टू दिस, तो आपने बस 7000 तो ये किया और वो बाकी तो सब सेम था आगे पीछे. So this is how you create diversity in your introductions. If you have to write 10 answers, like in GS you write 20 answers, GS में एक पॉइंट और ऐड हो जाता है ऑफ यूजिंग करंट अफेयर इवेंट्स इन योर इंट्रोडक्शन, जो हिस्ट्री में इतना नहीं है. हिस्ट्री में उसका उतना यूज नहीं हो पाता, बहुत ही कम एक आधा क्वेश्चन, जैसे कि आप वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में हम कहीं कहीं यूज कर पाएंगे. ठीक है. ट्राई टू क्रिएट बॉडी. बॉडी में अभी हमने बहुत आसान आपको क्वेश्चन दिए, तो सब हेडिंग्स आप बनाना सीख लो अभी के लिए. बाद में इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू बी जस्ट सब हेडिंग्स, यू हैव टू ऑल्सो अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट ऑल पार्ट यू हैव टू राइट. वो हम बाद में जब क्वेश्चन देंगे, बट अभी के लिए आप क्या करोगे? सब हेडिंग्स बनाना सीखोगे. थर्ड पार्ट इज कंक्लूजन. अभी के लिए आप बस बेसिक लेवल पे क्या कर सकते हो? यू कैन कनेक्ट द थीम ऑफ द क्वेश्चन विद द फ्यूचर इवेंट्स. उतना बेसिक लेवल पे आप सीख लो. अभी धीरे धीरे करके एक्सपेंड करेंगे आंसर राइटिंग को. ये तो बस बिगिनिंग है, जस्ट द बिगिनिंग ऑफ द बस. Yes, Amir, you can use that also. अभी बहुत ज्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेट नहीं करते आंसर राइटिंग को, है ना, अभी तो बस बिगिनिंग है, तो इतना कम से कम करो। टाइम लिमिट मैंने आप सबको बता दिया, 10 मार्कर हो तो 8 मिनट के आसपास कोशिश करो। आपका 15 मार्कर है तो 10 मिनट का स्टैंडर्ड टाइम है, और 15 का अगर 20 का आता है तो आपको 12 मिनट के आसपास का आपको टाइम मिलने वाला है। ठीक है, ये बस अप्रॉक्स मैंने आपको बता दिया, कभी कभार ऊपर नीचे होता रहेगा। लाइक 10 मार्कर कैन बी फिनिश्ड इवन इन 6 मिनट्स वंस यू हैव द स्पीड, बट वो स्पीड तभी आएगी जब आप इन चीजों पे कंट्रोल कर पाओगे। अगर आप हर बार इंट्रोडक्शन लिखते वक्त अटक जाते हो, लिख नहीं पाते हो, तो टाइम तो यहीं पे वेस्ट होना शुरू हो गया। देन आपको पॉइंट्स याद नहीं आ रहे हैं तो आपकी बॉडी में टाइम वेस्ट होगा। देन समझ नहीं आ रहा किधर का कंक्लूजन करूं, यहाँ पे टाइम वेस्ट होगा। सो द इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग इज फर्स्ट अंडरस्टैंड द स्ट्रक्चर, इम्प्रूव योर पॉइंट्स, नॉलेज इंप्रूव करते रहो, और साथ साथ में इन चीज़ों पे वर्कआउट करेंगे। तो जब हम क्लास में पर क्लास 1-2 क्वेश्चन लिखते जाएंगे ये सारी चीज़ें आपको आ जाएंगी। अभी बहुत सारी चीज़ें आंसर राइटिंग मैंने आपको कन्वे करना है, विच इंक्लूड्स लाइक इवन द मीनिंग्स ऑफ द वेरियस डायरेक्टिव्स। अभी तक मैंने आपको कोई भी डिफिकल्ट डायरेक्टिव नहीं दिया, जैसे कि इफ वी से एग्जामिन, है ना, इट्स नॉट ऑलवेज लाइक वट एवर इज गिवन इन द क्वेश्चन आपको एग्जैक्टली उसी के हिसाब से लिखना है। यू कैन राइट इवन अगेंस्ट इट, है ना, तो वो सारा आपको एग्जामिन में, क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन, जस्टिफाई, तो ऐसे ऐसे बहुत सारे डायरेक्टिव्स होते हैं। वी आर गोइंग टू हैव ए क्लास इन विच आर डिस्कस ऑल दीज डायरेक्टिव्स, हाउ answer structure, how the body structure of the answer is going to change as per the directive. Even your conclusion it depends upon directive कि क्या पूछा गया आपसे। like suppose किसी क्वेश्चन में आपको बोलते हैं justify, अब क्वेश्चन आ जाए justify अशोका was the most illustrious king in ancient India, तो वहां पे अगेंस्ट में कुछ लिखना ही नहीं है ना, वहां तो प्योर जस्टिफिकेशन चाहिए आपको। तो ऐसे ऐसे बहुत सारे डायरेक्टिव्स हैं जो हम पढ़ेंगे, कहीं पर डिस्कस आएगा, कहीं पे आपका आ जाएगा कमेंट आएगा, कहीं कुछ ऐसे बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस आप PYQ देखोगे ना आपको समझ में आएगा कि हाँ बहुत सारे। इसका हम स्पेसिफिक क्लास रखेंगे, उसमें आपको सारे एग्जाम्पल्स के साथ समझाऊंगा, तब आपको समझ में आएगा हाँ कि हर क्वेश्चन में एक तरीके का आंसर नहीं बनना। इवन इफ आई गिव यू ए सेम स्टेटमेंट, उसके पीछे डायरेक्टिव चेंज करो तो पूरा आंसर शिफ्ट होने लग जाएगा। ठीक है, जैसे कि आपका ये वाला क्वेश्चन है, why is Iltutmish considered as the real founder, तो सीधे सीधा आंसर है। यहाँ पे अगर मैं लिख दूं critically examine the statement that Iltutmish as the real founder of Delhi Sultanate, so when critically examine is going to come, तो उसमें से कुछ limitations भी तो होंगी। It's not like that Iltutmish has all the good things, no bad thing was there. So when we do critically examine, so we are also going to find out some negatives, okay, and that comes when we do the in-depth analysis of his policies. Like his policy of Mongols, it was defensive in nature, है ना, aloofness बोलते हैं उसको। If we see his policy of Turkani Chehelgani, he ended up giving too much power to them that even his own dynasty suffered because of that. So all these things are going to change when we change the directives. तो ये आपका नेक्स्ट स्टैंडर्ड है जो हम कोर क्लासेस के साथ में सीखेंगे। अभी के लिए बस आप ये बेसिक चीज़ें जान लीजिए कि इंट्रोडक्शन के कितने तरीके होते हैं, बॉडी में आपको सब हेडिंग्स बनाना सीखना है, और कंक्लूजन्स में आपको कनेक्ट करना है। लेटर ऑन आई विल टेल यू कि हाउ हियर you have to focus on innovativeness, that innovation is going to come through these chart, maps, diagrams which can be used. Then we'll also become conscious of historiography, जहाँ पे जो historiography है उसको कोशिश कर सकते हैं to incorporate that. In questions of paper 1 we should try to introduce the sources. When we use this also become a type of introduction, that the information about Akbar the Great comes from the writings of Abul Fazl in Akbar Nama. हमने ऐसे करके इंट्रोडक्शन लिख दिया, ठीक है, तो ये कैसा हो गया, इट्स अ सोर्स बेस्ड इंट्रोडक्शन। ऑलराइट, ऑल ऑफ यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस। तो ऐसे आपकी डाइवर्सिटी आपको बढ़ाते जानी है आंसर राइटिंग की, एंड विद इन अ मैटर ऑफ 3 to 4 months यू ऑल ऑफ यू कैन बिकम वेरी गुड। ये आप अपने दिमाग में बस याद कर लेना कि भाई ये सारी चीजें आंसर राइटिंग में हमने सीखनी है विद द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम। ठीक है, दैट्स इट फॉर टुडे, विल मीट टुमारो। मॉडर्न का जो बचा हुआ पार्ट है उसको पूरे को फिनिश करेंगे कल। ठीक है, ओके। आमिर, यू कैन कनेक्ट टू अस थ्रू द नंबर, आपको नंबर प्रोवाइड होगा, ठीक है, हिस्ट्री विद विकास अहलावत ग्रुप में आपको नंबर मिल जाएगा, आप कनेक्ट कर लो वहाँ से। यहाँ पे आपको डिस्क्रिप्शन में भी मिल जाएगा, यूट्यूब का जो वीडियो है उसके लिंक में मिल जाएगा, तो फ्रॉम देयर यू कैन टॉक टू द काउंसलर। समझ में आया आप सबको? आंसर लिखना